Now, here's a lesson of complex numbers. Now, the idea of a complex numbers is that when you take the square root of a negative number, that is called a complex number. This is what we're going to introduce. So when you take the square root of a negative number, we're going to call that a complex number. Now, the complex number that is the same as an imaginary number. Okay. They're the same. They refer to the same idea. When you take the square root of a negative number, we can call that a complex number, or we can also call that the imaginary number. Now, why do we call that the imaginary number? It's because we use the letter I to represent the square root of a negative number. So the square root of -1, that's I. And the I to the second exponent, that's equal to just -I. These are two properties that we're going to be using when we're about to simplify some square roots. So just remember that. If you take the square root of a negative number, that's an I. And I to the second, that's equals to -1. And we use complex and imaginary numbers that represent the same idea. Now, let's try to simplify the following. Simplify the square root of -36. Notice that we're taking the square root of a negative number. So we first need to rewrite this as imaginary form. So this is equal to I square root of positive 36. You can think of whenever you take the square root of a negative number, you can just take it as an I. And this is because the square root of -36, that is equal to the square root of -1 times positive 36, which is equal to the square root of -1 times the square root of 36. And we know that the square root of -1, that's equals to I, so it's I square root of 36. This is the reason why, but it's okay if you just use a shortcut. Take the square root of a negative number, take the I out, and rewrite it as positive. It's okay. So let me erase this. This is just the explanation. Okay, so now we have this I square root of 36. The square root of 36 is just 6. So this becomes I times 6, which is just the same as if I would write it as 6I. That's it. That's pretty much it. We take the square root of a negative number, with that's an imaginary number. The square root of 36 is just 6, so 6I. Now, let's look at example 2. Square root of -81. Well, that is the same as I square root of 81. Okay, now square root of 81, that's just 9. So that's equals to I times 9, which is the same as just 9 i's. Again, this is just introduction. Take the square root of a negative number. It's an imaginary number. Now, let's look at the last example. Square root of -100, that's the same as I square root of positive 100. And we know that the square root of 100 is just 10, so this becomes I times 10, which is just 10I. We usually put the I after the number. It's just convention. So if you take the square root of a negative number, it's a positive number itself, but we just gotta put an I on it to indicate that it was an imaginary number or the square root of a negative number. Now, how do we actually simplify? How do we actually work with imaginary numbers? Well, you can start thinking at imaginary numbers. You can combine them like if it was some kind of a variable. Now let's look at example 1. Again, if they have the same i's, you can just add the coefficients. Remember this in imaginary 1 here. So they have an I. You can treat the i's like if it was some variable. So 3i plus 1i, that's the same as just 4i's. Pretty much it. There's really no difference. When we use to simplify, we use the same idea as if it was a variable. Nothing fancy here. Now let's look at example B. Here we have, wow, We want to simplify, so we got to combine like terms. So let's look at like terms. -1 plus -4, that is equal to -5. -8i minus I, so that's -9i. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention is that your answers, they need to be written in A plus IB notation. Now, all it means is that if you have numbers, you put the number without the I first and the number with the I later. This is the real part, imaginary part, but that's okay. Now, here, again, is it an A plus BI notation? Yeah, we got the regular number first and the imaginary number second, so that's okay. So when you're combining, you first put the real number first and the number with the I later. Now, so we got example C. Again, let's add those numbers which do not have an I. So 3 plus 8 minus 7. So 3 plus 8, that's 11. 11 minus 7, so that's 4. So we got 4. Now, let's add the i's. 3i minus 2i, so that's equals to just 1i plus I. Okay, so I don't know what's wrong with the pen right now. So that's supposed to be an I. So plus I. Okay. So we got that. Again, all we're doing, we're just adding, like if it was regular variables. Nothing fancy here. Now, what happens if you're simplifying? I mean, if you're multiplying. So, again, imaginary numbers follow the same rules as if it was regular numbers. So when you're multiplying two binomials, you distribute. So we gotta distribute. -2 times 4, that's -8. -2 times I, so that's -2i. -I plus 4, that's equals to -4i. And -I plus I, that's equals to -I squared. Okay. Here we're gonna stop and we're gonna think, well, you gotta remember that one of the properties is that I squared is equals to -1. So this is a property that we're going to be using. So if you see I squared, it's okay for you to substitute it with a -1. So let's do that here. So that means that we're going to have -8 minus 2i minus 4i minus I to the second. Notice I have an I to the second here. This is equal to -1. So we're going to have -1, which negative times a negative, so that becomes +1. Okay. And now we can combine real numbers first, so the numbers without the I first. So -8 plus 1, that's equals to -7. -2i minus 4i, so that's -6i. Nothing fancy here. Now the only difference is that if you see an I to the second, you can just substitute it with a -1. Let's do another example here. Example 4. Same idea. You're multiplying, so that's okay. You follow the same rules. So 4i times -2, that's equals to -8i. Now, 4i times -2, when you have it to this form, you always multiply coefficients. So 4 times -2, so that's -8. You have not multiplied the I, so you just gotta rewrite it there. So this is how we got the -8i. Now we simplify it again. 4i times -8i, that's equals to -32 I squared. 4 times negative 8, that's 32. I times I, that's I squared. All right, so we got here. But now again, notice here, you have an I to the second. And we got to remember that I to the second is equals to negative 1. So let's rewrite this as negative 8 I minus 32 times negative 1. Okay, so now we have that this is equal to negative 8I, negative 32 times negative 1, so that's positive 32. Okay, in theory, this is my final answer. But again, we got to rewrite that in standard notation. So we got to put the number first, which is 32. And then we're going to put the number with the imaginary number later. So 32 minus 8I. This is correct. But we prefer to put it in standard form. Okay. So now, let's look at another example here. Example 7. So we got here, we're multiplying. So let's multiply these. So 7 times negative 8. That is equal to, let's see, 48. Oh man, why am I blanking out? 8464. Just use our calculator. So 8 times 7 is equal to 56. So use to negative 56 over here. Negative 56. 7 times 3i. So let's see, 7 times 3. 21. So we gotta, what is that? Plus 21i. Multiply that. So we got negative 6 times negative 8. That's equals to plus 48i. And now we multiply the last one, which is negative 6 times 3. So that's negative 18i squared. Let me rewrite this because I don't think this is okay for me to write in this form. 48i minus 18i to the second. Okay. Okay. So now again, notice if there's an I to the second. I see an I to the second here. It's equal to negative 1. Okay. Let's try to combine it in like terms, and then we can just simplify that. So let's see. Can I combine this negative 56 with anything else here? No, that's negative 56. Can I combine this I? Well, 21 plus 48. That's equal to 69. So plus 69i. Negative 18 times negative 1. So that's positive 18. Can I combine it like terms? I see that I can combine these two terms. So negative 56 plus 18, that's equal to negative 38. So negative 38 plus 69i. So that's what we have here. Again, you can follow the same ideas here. You can follow the same ideas as if it was regular numbers or if it was just a variable x. But the only difference is that I to the second, that's equal to negative 1. And you can treat i's like if they were variables. So let's write that. Variables. Okay. So use your entrance ticket. Just simplify the following. Remember, you can combine like terms. Treat I like if it was some kind of a variable. And where you're multiplying, don't forget to use the property of I to the second being equal to negative 1.